Study comes from the book of Daniel, chapter 10, verses 10 through 19. And they will read as follows. So I hope you are following along and you're getting something out of this. Daniel 10, chapter 10, verses 10 through 19. A hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said, Daniel, you are highly esteemed. Consider carefully the words I am about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you. And when he said this to me, I stood up trembling. Then he continued, Do not be afraid, Daniel, since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future, for the vision concerns a time of yet to come. While he was saying this to me, I bowed with my face toward the ground and was speechless. Then one who looked like a man touched my lips, and I opened my mouth and began to speak. I said to the one standing before me, I am overcome with anguish because of the vision. My Lord, and I feel very weak. How can I, your servant, talk with you, my Lord? My strength is gone, and I can hardly breathe. Again, the one who looked like a man touched me and gave me strength. Do not be afraid, you who are highly esteemed, he said. Peace. Be strong now. Be strong. When he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, Speak, my Lord, since you have given me strength. Amen. Now, if you look at the first verse, first two verses, verses 10 and 11, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said, Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words I'm about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you. And when he said this to me, I stood up trembling. If you look at Daniel and how faithful and strong that he was, you will still see that he was still trembling, weak and helpless in the presence of the one who touched him. It never stated who was there with him, and we know that the being had to be supernatural / spiritual, because Daniel would not bow down to any other. Also remember that the angels were working to bring God's condition into this situation. If you look at Hebrews 1:14, it says, Are not all angels ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation? So, then it goes into verse 12 and it says, Then he continued, Do not be afraid, Daniel, since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. Daniel had been calling to the Lord, praying, if you want to call it praying, petitioning. He was talking to him through fasting and prayers and personal sacrifice. Daniel was being faithful and calling upon the Lord, so we know that our God answers prayers. If you look at Daniel 10:2 through 3, at that time I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions at all until the 3 weeks were over. So Daniel was fasting. And the Lord sent an answer, and the answer stated in verse 12 states that. It says, I have come in response to them. All the things that you have been doing, from fasting to not eating the choice food, no meat or wine, no lotions, I've seen you have sacrificed to get closer to me, and I'm responding to your faithfulness and obedience. So here I am. And the Lord sent an answer, and the answer started in verse 12 as stated. If you look at 1 John 5:14 through 15, This is the confidence we all have, and it doesn't say all have, but we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we ask of him. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief prince, came to help me because I was detained there with the king of Persia. The prince of Persia, most likely a reference to an evil spiritual entity that wielded authority over the ancient kingdom of Persia, was a hand working against Daniel and interfering with his prayer. But this makes some think that the prince was actually another type of spirit that is demonic. It never stated who the prince was except of the Persian kingdom, but it did tell you the names of the kings, so I think demons were working against Daniel. If you look at Ephesians 6:12, it says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." And then if you go to Colossians 2:15, "And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross." So we already beat all that by the cross. Now I've come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future, for the vision concerns a time of yet to come. This speaks to future time and prophetic things to come. Things were happening now, but Daniel was also weary and alert to things of the future. He had to understand that this was also for the future, and he had to understand it was going to happen. The Lord was working presently and in the future and revealing it with understanding to Daniel. Now remember that this vision was focused on Israel that was still captive at the time. While he was saying to me, I bowed with my face toward the ground and was speechless. Then one who looked like a man touched my lips, and I opened my mouth and began to speak. I said to the one standing before me, I am overcome with anguish because of the vision, my Lord, and I feel very weak. How can I, your servant, talk with you, my Lord? My strength is gone, and I can hardly breathe. Daniel addresses his status when he says servant, and he was paralyzed and could hardly breathe. And this was probably from the sacrifice of fasting. He was weak. He had need, and he didn't have strength. He was physically weak from fasting, but he had to be spiritually weak from praying also. He was waiting for the Lord to fill him up. He had been praying. He had been in the spirit. So he needed to be filled up. Again, the one who looked like a man touched me and gave me strength. Daniel was weakened and probably overwhelmed from this situation, but now he was touched and given strength. The strength was not where the man fed him, but it had to be a spiritual strength that passed from one to the other. Verse 19, do not be afraid, you who are highly esteemed, he said. Peace. Be strong now, be strong. When he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, speak, my Lord, since you have given me strength. The angel revived Daniel and gave him the strength through the assurance that he is highly esteemed. And he said, peace, as to say, no conflicts, no troubles. You are protected. Daniel did understand why the messenger came. The angel whom we take to be Gabriel had to go fight the wicked angel / Prince of Persia. And as soon as the struggle was won, another wicked angel / prince would appear on behalf of Greece. Amen. Amen.